Good day, my friends. This is podcast 6. The topic is, sorta, what is happening to the world and how the ordinary people are supposed to make sense of it all, because it is a huge mess. So let's start with an opening. Okay, enough of that. Okay, the world in 2026 is not defined by a single crisis, but by the convergence of many. What we're living through right now is a structural realignment movement, a point in history where every major system is under strain, or if you wish, just a moment, let me just adjust this a little bit. There you go. A point in history where every major system is under strain, or if you wish, under attack at the same time. To understand the moment we're in, we have to begin with the global landscape of conflict, because conflict is the most visible expression of a deeper systematic problem. Just a second. It's all about money. Money, money, money. Okay, enough of that too. Okay, right now the global conflict landscape includes several layers of violence and instability. These are not abstract numbers. They represent the highest concentration of simultaneous conflicts since the end of World War II. The current global conflicts, the landscape includes 8 major wars, 11 major minor wars, 17 active conflicts, 10 skirmishes, 76 countries are involved in armed conflict of some nature, 8 nuclear risk situations exist, and 30 geopolitical tension zones are in play right now. My soundtracks is not working right now. Okay, thank you. Each of these conflicts reflects a different level of intensity, but together they form a picture of a world under extraordinary pressure. The 8 major wars right now are Russia-Ukraine, the Sudan Civil War, the Middle East regional war involving Israel, Gaza, Lebanon, and local regional actors are getting involved. Myanmar Civil War, Somali Civil War, the Shell Alamis insurgency across Mali, Niger, and Burkina, the Democratic Republic of Congo conflicts, and the Mexican war. Beyond these, there are 11 minor wars going on. Afghanistan, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Colombia, Ecuador, Ethiopia, Haiti, Nigeria, Syria, Venezuela, and Yemen. So, you can, like I say, I've lost more of my soundtracks, but big deal. The 17 active conflicts include, I'll be brief, Somalia insurgencies, Bangladesh insurgencies, lots of insurgencies, India, Iran, Pakistan, Mozambique, all insurgencies, the Angola, Cabinda conflict, Brazil, Davila conflict, Honduras, Spain conflict, Philippines insurgencies, Burkina Faso spillover conflicts, Mali, Niger, South Sudan, Libya, Chad, and Eritrea are to list a few. The 10 skirmishes include, so in other words, lesser conflicts, but still conflicts. India-Pakistan border, India-China, North Korea, South Korea, the DMZ zone, Israel-Lebanon, Turkey, Syria, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Serbia, Kosovo, China, the Philippines, and the maritime skirmishes in that area, Ethiopia, Somalia, Egypt, and Sudan. The lunatics that are trying. So to continue, 76 countries right now are involved in armed conflict in some form, whether fighting wars, hosting insurgencies, dealing with militias, participating in proxy conflicts, or engaging militarily abroad. The 8 nuclear risk situations right now are United States versus Russia, United States and China, India, Pakistan, India, China, North Korea against the United States, South Korea and Japan, Russia and China, Israel, regional adversaries. Sorry, having technical problems. And the 30 geopolitical tension zones include the Taiwan Strait, South China Sea, East China Sea, Korean Peninsula, Kashmir, Israel-Lebanon border, Israel-Gaza, Iran, U.S. Gulf region, Red Sea shipping lanes, Horn of Africa, Shell region, Sudan, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Libya, Western Sahara, Ukraine-Russia front, Belarus, the NATO border, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Serbia, it goes on, Turkey, Syria, Turkey, Greece, Venezuela, Colombia, Venezuela border, Haiti, Mexico cartel regions, Philippines, Indonesia, Myanmar, Mali, Rwanda. I mean, it's just insanity out there. There's so many issues to consider, but one is the stock market, because everything revolves around money. Okay, perhaps I fixed fixed this technical problem. In any case, so let's consider, because everything revolves around money. This is a little bit lengthy, but I'm going to do it anyway. So let's consider the daily reality of millions of people, if not billions of people. These pressures are not theoretical. They are measurable, structural, and widely acknowledged across international economic institutions. The documented global economic conditions include wage stagnation, declining housing affordability, historic levels of personal and economically problems. The world has experienced several documented conditions that shape national debt, increasing wealth concentration, higher cost burdens for younger generations. That's really major. Globalization shifting manufacturing away from domestic economies, productivity gains benefiting capital rather than labor. These forces combine to create an economic environment where growth continues on paper, but the lived experience of ordinary people becomes increasingly strained. The numbers rise, but the stability does not. Politically, many democracies face their own structural pressures. These are not isolated to one country or to one region. They're widespread patterns seen across multiple political parties. The documented political realities include trust in institutions is declining, polarization is increasing, legislative gridlock is common, leadership turnover is accelerating, consensus-based governance is weakening, information ecosystems are fragmented. These political conditions make it harder for governments to respond to crises, harder to build long-term policy, and harder to maintain public confidence. The system now becomes reactive rather than proactive. Justice systems show similar structural strain. Documented realities show wealthier defendants receive better legal outcomes than those who don't have resources. Access to high-quality defense correlates with income, which is crazy. Public defenders are overburdened. Pretrial detention disappropriately affects low-income individuals. Wealthy defendants can negotiate settlements and avoid charges altogether. We've all seen and heard about this. This creates a justice environment where outcomes are uneven, not because of the law itself, but because of the resources available to navigate it. Technological systems are transforming rapidly, reshaping labor markets, industries, and the structure of daily life. Global technological conditions include automation replacing routine labor, AI performing mid-skill cognitive tasks, job categories are transforming, digital platforms centralizing economic power, regulatory systems are lagging behind technological change. This technological acceleration is one of the most powerful forces reshaping the global economy and one of the hardest for institutions to come up with. Demographic trends add another layer of structural pressure. Worldwide demographic realities include an aging population, birth rates below replacement levels, rising dependency ratios, labor shortages, increasing immigration pressures, ongoing urbanization. These democratic shifts affect everything from healthcare systems to pension structures to labor markets to political stability. Environmental pressures intensify the complexity of the moment. Documented environmental conditions include increased extreme weather events, freshwater scarcity, agricultural stress, uneven energy transitions, accelerating biodiversity loss. These environmental realities interact with economic, political, and democratic process pressures, creating feedback loops that amplify instability. Historically, civilizations decline due to resource depletion, inequality, political fragmentation, external conflict, climate shifts, and technological disruption. Collapse is typically gradual and rarely reversible. It's not a single event, it's a process. Modern global systems exhibit high complexity, high interdependence, high fragility, limited reversibility, and once these thresholds are crossed, systems tend towards transformation rather than restoration. The world does not return to what it was, become something new. The world today is undergoing simultaneous transitions in technology, economics, geopolitics, demographics, environment, social structure. Institutions built for the industrial era are struggling in the digital era. The pace of change exceeds the pace of adaptation. The result is a transition zone, a period where the old systems no longer function as they once did, and the new systems have not fully formed. There's no single group controlling the global events, which I will question at the end of this podcast. The world is shaped by the interaction of governments, corporations, financial institutions, militaries, technological platforms, demographic forces, environmental pressures. These systems overlap, conflict, and reinforce one another. The outcomes are systematic, not coordinated. No one is steering the entire system, but many actors influence parts of it. As we move deeper into the structural realities of the world, the next layer is the human impact, the way these global pressures land on ordinary people. Systems are abstract, but their consequences are not. They show up in daily life, in material conditions, in stability, in opportunity, and in the sense of whether the future feels reachable or whether it's slipping away. The first dimension is material conditions. These pressures are not theoretical. They're lived, live realities for billions of people. The documented effects include material conditions, such as the cost of living, food, housing, energy, and basic services are consuming a larger share of income for most people. Then we have job security. Automation, offshoring, and instability mean more precarious work, fewer stable careers. Public services, health, education, infrastructure, and social supports are strained or underfunded in many places. Displacement, wars, climate, and economic collapse are driving record levels of migration and refugees. The net effect? For a large share of the global population, life is becoming more unstable, more expensive, and less predictable. This leads naturally to the question that many people ask: who is steering this? Governments, the ultra-rich, or is there perhaps more? The short answer, which I don't really believe, is that no one is fully in control, but some actors have far more leverage than others. So let's speak about governments. Governments set laws, taxes, regulations, trade rules, and military policy. They can start wars, end wars, sign treaties, deregulate markets, or protect them. They control central banks, monetary policy, in most cases they can, and large public budgets. But they're constrained by elections, which is another question, which is probably open for debate. In any case, they're constrained by elections, lobbying, debt, markets, and geopolitical pressure. Many are reactive, not strategic, responding to crises rather than shaping long-term direction. And then we get to the ultra-rich and large corporate sectors and large corporate actors. They control the capital, platforms, supply chains, media, and key technologies. They can move money across borders faster than governments can legislate. They influence policy through lobbying, campaign financing, think tanks, and ownership of media and infrastructure. In some sectors, tech, finance, energy, pharma, these decisions can move markets and reshape industries. But they don't control wars, demographics, climate, or the full complexity of global systems. They often act in their own interest, almost always, not as a unified group, we hope, but there is control by a small group. Factually, there is no single central controller, which at the end of this podcast, after reviewing my research and data, I question that. In any case, there are overlapping systems of power: states, corporations, financial institutions, militaries, and data platforms. Their incentives often align around growth, profit, always profit, and stability for themselves, not necessarily stability for everyone. What you are seeing is systematic outcomes produced by profit incentives, money, geopolitical rivalry, technological acceleration, weak regulation, and historical inequality. Not a secret council, but also not random. This combination lands unevenly on ordinary people. The pattern is clear. Risk is socialized. Gains are privatized. Crises, inflation, war, and intensity hit the general population. Asset booms, bailouts, and monopolies benefit those already positioned at the top. It's always the case. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. Decision-making is distant. Key economic and technological decisions are made in boardrooms, central banks, defense ministries, far from those who live with the consequences. Accountability is thin, if it exists at all. When policies or corporate strategies cause harm, responsibility is diffuse and consequences are rare. A clear way to say it in this podcast is there's no single group of super rich people sitting in a room controlling everything. But yes, a relatively small number of governments, corporations, the ultra-wealthy actors have disproportionate influence over systems that affect billions. And those systems, economic, military, technological, are now so complex and interconnected that no one really is steering them with the entire global population in mind. Maybe. This leads directly into one of the most important sections of this podcast, and that's the human consequences of a world without work. Across history, work has never been just about income. Work has been about structure, identity, routine, purpose, social connection, family stability, community cohesion, and a way to measure contribution. When work disappears, societies just don't lose wages, they lose meaning. And this is not speculation, it's documented. Post-industrial towns, regions hit by automation, communities hit by factory closures, mining towns after resource depletion, agricultural regions after mechanization, military downsizing zones, mass unemployment periods in history. The pattern is consistent across time and geography. The pattern of what happens when work disappears is consistent across history, geography, and economic systems. Not ideological, it's structural. When work vanishes, societies undergo predictable forms of strain, and individuals experience predictable forms of psychological and social dislocation. Well, let's continue. What happens when work disappears? There's loss of routine. Humans need structure. Without it, days blur, motivation drops, and mental health declines. Routine is not a luxury. It is a stabilizing force. People have loss of identity. People define themselves by what they do. When that disappears, so does a sense of self. Identity becomes unanchored. Then we have family strain. Financial pressure combined with a lack of routine creates stress, conflict, and breakdown. Families lose the stabilizing rhythm that work once provided. And then there's community decline. When workplaces disappear, so do social networks, shared goals, local economies, interdependence. Communities lose the glue that held them together. There's a rise in escapism. Historically, mass unemployment correlates with increases in substance abuse, gambling, escapist entertainment, extreme ideologies, conspiracy, adaptation, not because people are weak, but because they are adrift. Political volatility. When people feel economically useless, they become politically unpredictable. Stability erodes. And then there's generational disconnection. Young people lose faith in institutions, education, long-term planning, the idea of a future. This becomes nonsense. They don't see a future. This moment is different from the past because the era of lifetime jobs is over. They're gone. The backbone of the 20th century stability, the long-term unionized work, the manufacturing plants, the mining towns, the predictable careers, the stable positions, they're gone and they're not coming back. Then we look at automation. AI, robotics, the globalized supply chains have permanently changed the labor landscape. This is not a local issue. This is not a national issue. This is a regional issue and it's planet-wide. And that leads to the next structural question. What do governments do with millions of people who are no longer needed by the economic system?
Down the street with your red lips and funky beat, you better hold your head up to the sky. I'm gonna roll with you till the day I die. Hey, swing those hips around. Can't stop, roll back down. My ladies, short, tall, thin or wide, always down and ready to ride. One by one, billion by billion, been holding up half the sky. Raise your hand if you're ready and willing, if you know it's time. Time for a girl on time. Time for a girl on time. Time for a girl on time. Whether you're ready or not, time for a girl. Break free of history. This train is racing straight ahead. No man can do like I can. I'm the queen of the land. Haters gonna hate. Won't be sorry now. Shoot me down, but I'll rise again. I'm laying down the law and you've been served. One by one, billion by billion, been holding up half the sky. Raise your hand if you're ready and willing, if you know it's time. Time for a girl on time. Time for a girl on time. Time for a girl on time. Whether you're ready or not, time for a girl on time.
Okay, let's continue. Governments, just a moment, please. Lots of technical problems this week. Governments face a structural dilemma. They cannot create enough traditional jobs. The economy no longer needs as many workers. They cannot force companies to hire people they don't need. Automation is cheaper, faster, more reliable, and usually more profitable. They cannot allow mass unemployment to continue unchecked because instability rises, trust collapses, families break down, social cohesion erodes, political volatility increases. They cannot rely on old solutions. 20th century tools don't work in the 21st century economy. So what do governments do? Here are some of the structural strategies governments around the world exploring. None are perfect, all are partial. Universal basic income. I'm sure some people will love that. A guaranteed income floor removes survival pressure, does not solve purpose or identity, but it potentially replaces many social programs that are in effect right now. Job guarantees. Governments create work in infrastructure, care sectors, environmental restoration, public services. These programs are expensive and politically fragile. Probably won't happen. Shorter work weeks, something like in Australia. Spreading work across more people helps some sectors, not all. And then it becomes the issue of compensation. Retraining and long-time learning, useful but limited. Not everyone can become a coder, analyst, or designer, and many people don't want to learn new skills. They're not interested. Subsidizing industries that employ humans. Governments pay companies to keep people employed. This is already happening quietly in some countries, allegedly. I couldn't find out which country that applies to. Expanding public sector employment. Governments hire more people directly, but budgets are limited. Social purpose programs creating roles that provide meaning even if they don't produce profit. Yeah, right. We all know how long that's going to last. Let's talk about the reality. None of these options fully resolve the core problem, because the core problem is not just economic, it's existential. Humans need a purpose, structure, contribution, recognition, community, and identity. If these disappear, societies destabilize. Governments can provide income, they cannot easily provide meaning. That's the real challenge. And the challenge is not isolated to one region, it's global. Automation and AI are affecting manufacturing in Asia, agriculture in Africa, logistics in Europe, retail in North America, and services everywhere on the planet. Every country is facing rising unemployment, rising underemployment, rising precarity, rising youth frustration, rising distrust, rising inequality. This is the first time in human history the entire planet is experiencing the same structural labor disruption in the same manner, in the same time frame. And that brings us to the next major section, the generational realization that the future they were promised is gone. In other words, young people today, let's back up. When I was coming through the system, I was always told honesty and integrity, a good work ethic, good education, save and invest, and you could acquire what you wanted in life. Young people today are, for the most part, realizing it's not going to happen. I'll give you some more examples at the end of this podcast. We're getting close. In any case, I'll give more examples at the end. But in any case, young people today, the majority of them realize that what their parents had, they're not going to have. They may never even own a home. So let's talk about the generalized realization the future we were promised is gone. Across multiple regions, younger generations are facing home ownership, they'll never have it. Education is increasingly expensive. Stable careers are disappearing. We do not match living costs. Wages do not match living costs. Debt loads are higher than ever. The economic ladder is harder to climb. The social contract that worked for the parents no longer applies. This is not a moral failing, it's a structural failing. And when an entire generation realizes that the old path is gone, they don't accept it quietly. They adapt, reject, redefine, and many just give up. They just go on social programs, to heck with it. So what happens when a generation sees no future in the old system? They disengage from traditional institutions. When people feel a system offers no path forward, they pull away from it. Higher education, traditional employment, political participation, long-term planning, home ownership, marriage and family formation. This is already happening globally. These people aren't looking at these issues anymore. They redefine success instead of career, home, pension. They shift towards flexibility, mobility, side hustles, under-the-table activities, digital income, alternative lifestyles, community-based identity. They reject narratives that no longer match reality. When society tells them, work hard and you'll succeed, but the numbers say otherwise, they stop believing the narrative. I would. They express frustration, not because they're entitled, but because the economic model changed and the promises didn't. This generational shift is not happening in isolation. It's connected to the breakdown of educational systems, the rising cost of living, and the structural changes in labor markets. Okay, let's talk about the educational breakdown. When education becomes too expensive, participation drops. And when participation drops, skill levels decline, innovation slows, inequality widens, social mobility collapses, entire industries lose talent, the economy becomes less competitive. An uneducated society is not useless, but it becomes less adaptable and less resilient. Education is not just about jobs, it's about the ability to navigate a complex world. When access collapses, the whole system strains. This leads directly into the next structural reality, the purpose vacuum. Humans need structure, purpose, contribution, recognition, community, and direction. If people have no work, no income, no path forward, they don't simply relax. They fall apart. What happens? Restlessness, frustration, identity loss, social withdrawal, emotional strain, disconnection. People must occupy their time. If society doesn't provide meaningful pathways, people create their own, for better or worse. This connects directly to the economic loop that we have spoken about, the fundamental mechanics of demand. The economic loop, when people have no money, demand collapses. We're speaking about the fundamentals of economics, supply and demand. Company exists because people buy things, demand. If people have no money, demand collapses, supply is not required. The whole everything collapses, including companies. This is not ideology, it's basic supply-demand mechanics. When large populations lose purchasing power, retail industries decline, housing markets stagnate, services shrink, small businesses close, tax revenue drops, governments cut services, unemployment rises further. It becomes a feedback loop. This is why economists call consumer spending the engine of modern economies. If the engine stalls, the system strains and eventually falls apart. That brings us to the next structural dilemma. How do governments maintain stability when millions feel left out? Governments face a structural challenge. They can't force companies to hire people. Automation and AI reduce the need for labor. They cannot allow mass unemployment to continue because social stability depends on routine, purpose, income, predictability, community. Government cannot rely on old solutions, the 20th century model of factory jobs, pensions, unions, long-term employment, that's gone. They must create new forms of purpose and participation, not just income, but meaning. So this is the next real challenge for the next 50 years. And the challenge is not isolated to one region or one country, it's global. Automation, AI, and economic restructuring are affecting Asia's manufacturing, Africa's agriculture, Europe's logistics, North America's services, South America's resource sectors. Every region is experiencing youth frustration, declining opportunity, rising costs of living, shrinking middle class, unstable employment, political volatility. It's the first time in human history the entire world is undergoing the same structural labor disruption simultaneously. And that leads into the final arc of the narrative, the bottom line, the transition and the thinking points that close the episode. And there's a few more. All of these forces, the conflicts, the economic pressures, the demographic shifts, the technological acceleration, the political fragmentation, generational disillusionment, converge into a single structure reality. The world is entering into a transition zone. Not collapse, not yet, not chaos, but transformation. And that brings us to sort of a semi-conclusion to this narrative. Is that it's kind of falling apart. So let's continue. Just a moment. Technical problems abound this week. In any case, I'm not quite finished. I want to speak about the latest NASA mission called Artemis. Remember, this is just my opinion. You definitely might not agree, but let me continue. NASA has been extremely clear. Artemis 2 is not a science mission and not a moon landing mission. It's a systems test, a crew test in a deep space readiness tests designed to prove the hardware before any landing attempts. Here are the latest official NASA stated purposes, pulled directly from their publications. Number 1, test the Orion spacecraft with humans on board. Artemis 2 is the first crewed flight of Orion, and NASA explicitly states the mission meant to validate the spacecraft, life support systems, and operational procedures needed for the future moon landings. This includes testing life support, testing communications, propulsion, testing manual flight controls, ensuring the spacecraft can keep humans alive in deep space. That was the core purpose. And it's to conduct a full-scale deep space systems test, no landing. Describes Artemis 2 as a proving ground, a mission to ensure systems work in deep space before attempting a landing. Not meant to land on the moon, to fly around on a free return trajectory. Is to prepare for future landings and long-term presence on the moon. They say this is a key step. This is all right from their website. So, they say this has sent humans further into deep space than anyone since Apollo, since 1972. It demonstrates international cooperation. Artemis accounts commitments is a global partnership with multiple nations participating. It's the first crewed demonstration of that framework. So what is the mission really for Artemis 2? It's a dress rehearsal, a human crewed shakedown cruise to make sure the rocket capsule life support deep space operations actually work for NASA risks a landing attempt. No science. I love that one. No science. No landing, no surface operations, no experiments that require humans. Just proving the hardware. Now, from the public data which I can find, it's cost the U.S. taxpayer, and I don't know how much it's cost other nations who have allegedly contributed to this activity, but it cost the U.S. taxpayer approximately $93 billion U.S. for the entire Artemis launch and recovery. This is an estimate. So I ask, did we need to send 4 crew members? Did we need to send any humans? Could we not have done this robotically? Do we need to make this? Did we need to make this launch? Was it really necessary? Why was there limited to no science in the flight? Nothing. Is there potentially more going on here than the public is being told? I just can't believe that NASA spent 93, if you wish, round it to $100 billion on a joyride for 4 elitists. I'm not mitigating the requirements to be an astronaut. I'm not. I'm just saying, did we really need to spend in round numbers $100 billion sending a tin can around the moon? Did we really need to do that? I watched some of the video. Didn't seem like anybody was very serious. Seemed to me like everybody was joking around and laughing and having a good old time. Well, I don't know. I guess it's okay. If you've got billions to spend, blow it. Let's talk about briefly about the U.S.-Iran war. Again, all public information. Total estimated cost, direct and indirect, approximately $80 to $115 billion as of April 14th. Let's say it again, 80 to 114 or $115 billion. And this action is not over yet. So I'm going to ask, were there no other alternatives to this war? Could the U.S. not have worked with neighbors to Iran to build a pipeline that would circumvent the Strait of Hormuz? These nations are Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, Oman. My data shows that it's possible to create a giant oil and natural liquid nitrogen gas pipeline, which could allow the bypass the Strait of Hormuz. This giant bypass system, I won't go into all the names, but there's 5 ports that research has shown would be viable alternatives to shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. These are geographically logical endpoints, and it could happen. It would probably take a decade to create it. Let's talk about When a generation realized the old future which they told would be available to them doesn't exist. What their parents had, they probably won't have. And when millions of people all at once realize the world in a deep transition, not collapse, not chaos, but transformation, I think it's clear why some young people just don't care. This is the moment we're living through, a moment where the old systems are straining, the new systems are not yet formed, and the population is caught in the space between. So let's talk about a few more things. As we look at the world as it stands today, the conflict, the economic pressures, the democratic shifts, the technological acceleration, the environmental strain, and the generational uncertainty, there are no simple answers to all these things. There's no single path forward, but there are questions worth considering. Questions that don't resolve anything, but reveal the contours of the world we're living in. What happens to a society when the traditional future, career, home, stability becomes unreachable for most of the people living in it, referring to young people? What does purpose look like in a world where work is no longer the center of life and where millions of people are no longer needed? Not needed. If education becomes too expensive for the majority and too disconnected from real opportunity, what replaces it? And what does society become when its population is undereducated, underemployed, underengaged? If companies depend on demand, and demand depends on income, and income depends on work, employment, what happens when employment disappears? What happens when the economic engine slows, not because of recession, but because the structure itself has changed? If younger generations see no path to ownership, to stability, to a path similar to what their parents had, how long before they redefine the meaning of success or reject the system entirely? If governments cannot create enough jobs, cannot slow automation, cannot reverse global trends, it cannot restore the old world, what do? What tools do they have left? If the ultra-wealthy and large corporations hold disproportionate influence, but no one is actually in control, what does governance look like in a world where power is distributed but responsibility is not? If people must fill their days with something and the system is no longer provides structure, what fills the vacuum? Community, creativity, escapism, frustration, social unrest? If the world is entering a transition zone politically, economically, technologically, environmentally, how do individuals navigate a future that's no longer predictable, stable, or linear? If every major system is straining at the same time, as it is, what does it mean to live through a moment where the old world is fading and the new world has yet not been formed? What happens if the global stock markets fail? Well, we all know when the stock markets fail, pretty much everything else fails. The challenge we face is global. Automation and AI affect just the way we think, whether it's legitimate or not. People now are thinking about AI in their jobs and how it's going to change society. Younger generations are realizing that the future they were promised is gone. They face no home ownership, expensive education with huge debt that may never be paid off, disappearing careers, wage cost mismatch, high debt, a broken social contract. So what are they doing? They're disengaging from traditional institutions, redefining success, rejecting old narratives, expressing frustration. Perhaps their use of drugs could be related to this loss of a future vision. Education becomes too expensive. Participation drops in societies experience declining skill levels, slower innovation, widening inequality, collapsing social mobility, talent loss, and reduced competitive. People must occupy their time. Without work, income, or direction, what do? They experience restlessness, frustration, identity loss, social withdrawal, emotional strain, disconnection. It goes on and on. When people have no money, demand collapses. And when demand collapses, the whole system collapses. I mean, gravity doesn't exist. Everything turns on money. Yes, I know that's not physics, but it's practical. Without money, it's all over. So we get to a point we have questions. What happens to a society when the traditional future becomes unreachable? What does purpose look like without work? What replaces education when it becomes too expensive? What happens when work disappears and demand collapses? How long before younger generations redefine success? What tools do governments have left? What does governance look like when power is just distributed, but responsibility is not? What fills the vacuum when structure disappears? How do individuals navigate a future that is no longer predictable? What does it mean to live through a moment where the old world is fading and the new world has not yet been formed? There's no conclusion. The only recognition that we're living in a time where the questions matter more than the uncertainty. Look, I'm not promoting or advocating anything, but to have people think. Just think about things. I do suggest that there's more going on than what we're told. Ultimately, who or what is in control of this global meltdown? The government, this government, the Canadian government, is playing games and potentially destroying two established legal and tried activities, which are international students coming to Canada and studying, and legal gun ownership. Both create approximately $110 billion of proven revenues in Canada. $110 billion. This government is potentially going to destroy this income. I'm totally perplexed at this. How can a government that's spending money like it grows on trees, at the same time they're looking to cap and to close legitimate, legal, proven income paths such as international student studying and legal gun ownership in Canada? What are they doing? What's really going on? I don't understand. I don't get it. In any case, maybe you do. As taxes rise, as utility costs rise, as the costs of food and fuel increase, as jobs are lost, as education costs skyrocket, the potential for huge unemployment numbers exists. As political floor jumping tends to destroy democracy, what is the future? One-party government which never changes? I can't rationalize that this is the plan. But what is the point of having elections to elect different candidates for different parties who run on a campaign of different platforms and objectives, and then when they're in government as elected officials, they just jump across the floor to any party they want? I can't get my head around that being democratic. I created a podcast on that. I still maintain that if someone is going to leave the party which they were elected to and jump to another party, I feel it's only fair to the people who elected them, their electorate, that they step aside. They refrain, that they have to leave the party or they have to wait until there's another by-election. But I don't think floor jumping promotes democracy or legitimacy. In any case, follow the social media yourself. I mean, floor jumping seems to be the way to do it today. Just get elected by any party on any platform, then you just jump around the way you want to go. Your constituency means nothing. In any case, is the dream of home ownership, is it dying or dead? This is real. I have neighbors here who are in their 40s, 50s. I've spoken to them. They can't find 10% to put down on a $600,000 home. Of course, even 10% down on a $600,000 home is only $60,000. I mean, look at the debt, which is outstanding, $540,000 or more, paid off over, I assume, a 25-year mortgage. I mean, the payments are astronomical, and that only the mortgage payments, not the utilities, the taxes, and everything else that goes with it. But they can't find 10%. I asked, could they find 5%, which is 30,000? So they don't have it. They don't have it. So unless these people are somewhat representative of middle-class people in their 40s and 50s, they rent. They probably will never own a home unless they get a large inheritance, win a lottery, or something along that line. So the question remains, we're going to have a lifetime of renters. And if taxes and expenses keep rising, will middle class home ownership end? I don't know. Maybe. We will all become renters, which may be the ultimate goal of government. And if we're all renters, and if the government turns to a system where everybody receives a basic floor income, let's just say it's $1,000 a month, some arbitrary number, and you're renting from the government, they have full control. They know exactly what your finances are. Is it just control? Is that all they want? I don't know. You ask yourself. You look at it and come up to a decision yourself. If there are no jobs, or very few jobs, will we become a society supported by government, which I've already spoken about, where the government pays a basic salary floor to everybody, regardless of what they do or anything else. And this kind of turns our society into a government controlled big brother. They can watch us. Will we be required to carry extensive papers, as they allegedly exist in the Soviet Union or Russia? I mean, we sort of have to carry papers. We call it a wallet with identification, driver's license, ownership, insurance if you're in a vehicle. But if you're stopped on the street, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't know if the police have a right to demand some sort of legal documentation. But I mean, are we heading towards that? Like you see movies in the Soviet Union, you know, their police say, let me see your papers. I don't know. I mean, we sort of must carry papers now, sort of. Are we heading into the big brother government watch eye, a police state, where laws mean potentially not very much unless you're extremely well connected or you're very affluent? Arrest and confinement, no legal process exists. Are we heading towards that? Will the rich and the elite be living on the moon and Mars, sucking the resources from Earth, while the rest of humanity sits here in squalor? Is that going to happen? Russia wants Ukraine, and I believe they want a number of the surrounding nations, including parts of Europe. The U.S., I mean, it sounds funny, but it isn't. The U.S. wants Canada. It wants Greenland. It probably wants the surrounding nations, including South America, Latin America, Cuba, Mexico. China wants Taiwan and probably wants control and ownership of the nations in that area. So is there going to be controlled, agreed upon regional realignment of nations controlled by the US, Russia, and China? Maybe. we've got to look beyond what's just happening today. Is there something going on that China, Russia, and the US know about? And I'm going to say yes, something. Coming to the end of this podcast, let's speak about a few more things before we close down. There's several NATO member countries have refused to allow US basing for Iran-related operations. This part is true, at least according to public news reports, it's true. Countries like Germany, Italy, Spain, Belgium, the Netherlands made statements that their territory or territories could not be used for launching offensive strikes, staging aircraft, participating in escalation with Iran. There were national decisions. These were national decisions, not NATO decisions. Let's be clear. I don't have a PhD in psychology, but it's human nature. You harm or abandon me when I need help. I'm just speaking as a person X scenario. This person X is going to retaliate in some form or some degree. My point, NATO was not explicitly not asked to help the US, but individual nations refused to help the US. Trump and or the US will retaliate. You watch, mark my word, one day, sooner than later, the US will get its pound of flesh. I think it's just human nature. And perhaps the US will get its pound of flesh by applying a US tariff on oil and liquid natural gas coming from the Gulf as a way to be paid back for regaining control over oil shipments and Middle East stability. Telling you that Europe is going to pay for not helping the US. It's going to. I guarantee you. So let's speak about the cost of education. So what does a full 4-year Ivy League degree cost? When I speak of Ivy League, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, MIT, Caltech, there's a few other ones like Cornell perhaps, but the big Ivy League, or maybe Columbia, Dartmouth, Penn, Yale, but the big ones, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, MIT, Caltech, estimates are for a 4-year degree from those institutions, it's going to cost somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 United States dollars, somewhere in that range. It's a lot of money to pay, but again, I guess if your parents are billionaires, I guess it doesn't matter. But when we speak about education for the general public, I don't think the general public can afford to spend potentially $400,000 or $500,000 on a 4-year degree. Maybe. So what does it cost for a full 4-year Canadian Ivy League equivalent degree? Well, first of all, let's be clear. Stated in the terms of Ivy League, there is no Ivy League university or college in Canada. But I suppose you could look at the larger major universities in Canada, which might be Queen's, U of T, maybe York, and Western, maybe. But in any case, from what I can see, a domestic Canadian student will pay somewhere on the upper end of 200,000 Canadian. Depends on the program, but it's engineering, business, computer science, whatever. I mean, these are not etched in stone numbers, they're approximate. International students, as we've discussed in a prior podcast, international students typically are paying approximately 5 times what domestic students are. So a domestic student is paying for a university degree at one of the major Canadian universities at 200, 300,000 Canadian. International students could be paying 500 or 5 times that, which is 200 times 5 is $1 million, or if it's 300 is $1.5 million. I mean, it's expensive. And I guess the question becomes, is it worthwhile? I did some reading, and apparently back in the 40s, 50s, when I don't think I should mention names. I'm still not comfortable with naming names, even though it might be perfectly legitimate. When some of the major senators and Congress people graduated from Ivy League schools back in the 40s and 50s, they had recruiters already with cash in hand and job opportunities being offered to them. They didn't have to do anything. But today, that's not the case. I know a young man from when I was at York, and he has a PhD in theoretical physics from York University. And one day I was in the grad lounge and he came down the hall. He wasn't yelling and screaming, but he was quite elated. He had passed his dissertation and his exam, and he had his PhD. So I met him a few years later. He told me he was going to apply to a number of research institutions around the planet, of course, in theoretical physics. And he was very positive. Well, I met him a few years later in Aurora, north of Toronto, and I asked him how he was doing, what he was doing, and he told me he was, I'm not going to say where, just working on a farm. And he said, yeah, I make more. He said, nobody on the planet, nobody would hire me to do research in physics as they wouldn't hire me. And so he was working on a farm, maintaining the barns. And he said that the compensation he received from that activity was as much or more than he would make if he was working in physics. Well, what can I say? He was in his early 40s when he graduated with his PhD, so I'm going to make an assumption, which I don't know. Let's say he started university at 18 or 19, even 20, and he graduated at 42, 43, 44. So that's 20 some odd years of his life he dedicated to get his PhD. And there's a thing called opportunity cost, which everyone knows who's in business or economics, the cost of doing one thing versus the cost of doing something else. So he potentially forfeited, let's just say 20 years of income he could have had, say at 20, let's say 50,000 a year. That's $1 million. He could have had the interest on that, let's say at 10%, of course, accumulated each year. And if he reinvested it, he probably would have been looking at best part of $1.5 million. When he graduated, I'm not sure what debt load he had, but it probably had to be reasonably high. So again, the cost of getting a good education today, you've got to ask, is it worthwhile? And you know what they call a BA. Well, it's not a Bachelor of Arts. It's if you're a university graduate, you know what they call a BA. And you know what they call an honors degree. In other words, everyone has one. I'm not being rude. Please, I'm not being rude. Everyone has one. If you apply for a position today with an employer, you say, I've got a BA in economics or business administration or an honors degree, the employer probably just shrugs. It's expected and commonplace. In any case, okay, so let's talk a little bit about, I'm coming to a close, but I want to mention a few more things. Let's talk about the estimated percentage of U.S. service members by family income background. And I'm getting a little bit tired, and I need a drink of water, so I'll get right to this. These are publicly listed estimates on the internet. Anyone can find them. Approximately 82% of the workforce, the enlisted personnel in the U.S. military, come from lower income families, middle to lower income families. Upper class is about 5%, and wealthy, I don't know what the definition of wealthy is, but wealthy families, 1% or less of their families enter into the U.S. military. In terms, that's general enrollment. Officers, affluent and wealthy families are 2 to 4%. The rest are primarily lower income to middle class families. So the combined total force estimate of U.S. military members from wealthy families, 1 to 3%. So I'm not exactly sure what comment I'm trying to make about this, but it clearly goes to support that if you're from a family with means, laws don't apply. If you come from a family with means, you're connected, you're a celebrity, then perhaps the laws don't apply equally to you as if you were a person from a middle-class family or a lower-class family, and your ability to pay for top-notch legal representation is limited. The military component certainly goes to show that if you have finances in this world, you're not faced with the same problems as a person from the middle class or lower income families. So, moving on. It's a mess. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, maybe, but I do know that populations of the planet are told what governments want them to know. I had a top secret clearance a while back, and we did our training on the equipment we were working on down in Colorado Springs outside of Cheyenne Mountain at a government-controlled agency. And we were given a number of documents to read on what was released to the public and so forth. And it's very interesting. And from what's come out in the last maybe 12 years, it's fairly clear that the news media today has a left and right position. They're generally not down the center of the spectrum. They report the news as with a twist that they want. And we, as the recipients of that news, it's difficult to determine what the truth is anymore. It's just not clear. In any case, I want to say this again. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I probably am. But I do know that populations of the planet are told what the governments want them to know. We'll use the mushroom and the SH scenario, mushrooms in a dark room and something's thrown on them. I don't know what YouTube allows me to say, but I think you can fill out the scenario. This is there's no nation on the planet to control the populations if populations rise up. The only way governments control populations by limiting what information there is released, controlling the finances and the economics of a nation, beating the public to death with taxes, job losses, and dependency upon the government. It's true. You think about it. Is there a global human component controlling mechanisms in the world? Is control founded on a few super rich? Is it based upon government leadership worldwide? Is this global change facilitated by the US, China, Russia? Is there a plan here? Hold on a second. Is the world being controlled in part by this institution in the picture? You think about it. Or is the combined intervention between the US, China, and Russia, is China involved in this? Think about it. Or is it a combination of Russia, China, and the US? Are they working together to change the world order? Keep thinking. So I'm asking you to think about this. Is this global controlling mechanism human? Is it AI, or is it something else? Are the changes we are seeing globally just part of movement towards total government control? Is there a combined understanding between the US, China, and Russia that they're going to create a new world order and take control of specific pieces of geography that they want? Is the middle class at risk? And is it disappearing as we speak? Governments just keep piling on the taxes, and soon the middle class will be gone. Stats tell us that in the US, 65 to 80% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Say it again. 65 to 80% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. In Canada, the public stated statistics reflect 50 to 65% of Canadians live paycheck to paycheck. I won't name the philanthropist. This is not exact quote, by the way, but it is substantially correct, more or less. Has stated publicly one of the most stupid things, he didn't say stupid, one of the most questionable financial activities that people do today is to buy a home. He said, rent, pay no taxes, no upkeep costs, just rent. He said, owning a home keeps the owners poor. He added, renting can sometimes be financially smarter than owning, but a home's value, as he adds, is mostly emotional. It's not monetary. But it's something to think about. When you rent, you pay your rent. If utilities are included, you pay what is asked. That's it. If utilities aren't included, then you pay your rent and you pay the utilities. But the home owner is responsible for the taxes and the maintenance and the upkeep and on and on and on. So if real estate increases in price, as typically it does or has, then home ownership may be balanced with the costs of owning a home. But if real estate doesn't increase in value as it has in the past, then perhaps renting is the best way to go, at least in the short term. In any case, I guess it's a question you have to think. Let's talk about a few more things before I come to a close. And this is not totally in line. I'm a little bit off topic here. Let's talk about when we were in school. I think it was fairly standard about the Big Bang. Oh, that's the creation at the moment where the universe collapsed on itself to a infinitely small point, and then it exploded. So I ask you, is the Big Bang real or is it nonsense? I mean, does anybody really know? Let's look at Darwin. Darwin once speculated through The Origin of Species, 1859, that the descent of man, 1881, that mankind arose from evolution. There's no tangible signs of this evolutionary theory, although it did appear in textbooks at one time. I have read that the U.S. has bases now on Mars and on the Moon, fully occupied, and has had these bases for years. Is it true? I have no idea, but if you look it up on social media, you'll find it. Okay, let's continue. I'm almost done. Does the U.S. have fully occupied bases now on the Moon and Mars? Some say yes. It's certainly on social media. You can find it, and I guess you could respond and say, I can find anything on social media. It's reported that NASA is hiding the truth, and the truth is that Mars does have running water. There may be a minimal atmosphere on Mars. If you search, I've seen this, there are or were, they may be removed, allegedly photographs from the Mars Global Explorer, which shows forests and trees on Mars, not on the whole planet, in certain areas. There are also videos from Mars which allegedly show strange objects, something moving, which could be life or remnants of past structures. You watch some of the video feeds if you have some time. It's difficult to tell what's real and what isn't. AI is generated, everybody's using advanced graphics and coming up with nonsense, and that's kind of a shame. But is it true? I'm going to talk about something in a minute, which is very interesting. Hold on a second. Okay. I believe that last time humanity walked on the moon was Apollo 17, December 1972, and humanity never returned. There were rumors that the U.S. was told to get off the moon and not to return. And this was an ultimatum given to them by alien life. Is it true? Don't ask me. Why did the U.S. not return? In round numbers, that's some 55 or so years ago. Why did the U.S. spend all these billions of dollars in Canadian equivalency dollars values? Why they spend all this money to go to the moon and then just leave? End it. There's more to this story. We'll probably never hear the entire truth. We won't. But there's got to be more to it. It just doesn't make any sense. So let's talk about why the general public can't visit Antarctica. What's the secret? What's the big deal? The public can visit the Arctic if there are cruises and people have the finances. So why can't the public and other agencies visit the Antarctic? What's going on down there? There's something. Just a sec. So let's speak a little bit about NASA. Again, all public domain. Apparently, NASA has paid $10,000 US plus for a single tool, which normally would cost a few dollars. Sure. There are temperature issues, there are gravity issues, radiation resistance, but $10,000 for a wrench? What's the reason NASA needs so much money? Is this excess of funds being used for something else, which is secret and not revealed to the public? That makes sense. So let's talk about alien craft. Not made of elements found in the Earth, with technologies which are beyond our present knowledge, which would be found and taken to secret research locations like Area 51, allegedly. What about Bob Lazar, former worker at Area 51? I think that's been proven to be true. He came out in 1989 or so and spoke about what he saw. Was he fabricating just for publicity purposes, or was he speaking about things he saw? It goes on, and the questions remain. Is there more? I want to add, I'm almost to a close. I want to add as a last minute note, I just picked it up today. Apparently, social media is now reporting that the Canadian government is now trying, the key word is trying, to create a $1 trillion investment strategy, yet at the same time they seem focused on closing, ending, destroying, limiting two other programs which are currently in operation, which combined add about somewhere around $650 billion each to the Canadian government. That's international students studying in Canada and legal firearm ownership. Yet they appear to have no interest in these proven revenue generation activities. I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me at all. Maybe it makes sense to you. Yeah, sure. The government wants to create a $1 trillion investment strategy while it eliminates major programs now that are in operation in effect. As a last minute inclusion, I also hear today that NATO has offered to help President Trump and the US, and Trump's reply was he needed NATO 2 months ago, but now the US does not need NATO. Telling you, Trump and the MAGA group will remember how NATO and the various European nations obstructed the US. They offered little to no help. You wait, Trump is going to get his pound of flesh. It's just human nature. You decide. You ask yourself the questions, is there more? You can bet your life there's more. Keep watching, keep listening, question things. The government wants to keep you busy. They want you to keep working. They want you to pay taxes. They don't want you to have anything. That way you come home, you're exhausted. The kids want things. Your wife's upset. Everyone's upset. You can't think straight. This is not just happenstance. This is the way it is. They don't want the public to think. So I'm asking you, I'm not suggesting you do anything other than think. Look at the media and think beyond what they're telling you, because we're never going to get the whole truth. It's always going to be skewered, and we'll get the flavor of the originating organization. We'll get their take on things. So, hey, I'm sorry I screwed up this podcast as usual. And I did. Had some technical glitches, which I fixed. But I promise I'll do better next time. So take care, everybody. Have a good week, and I'll see you in a week, maybe.